On November 21, 1964, the FBI mailed a letter to Martin Luther King Jr. The letter included recordings made from microphones hidden in his hotel rooms. It described his extramarital affairs in clinical detail. And then it said this: "You have 34 days. 34 days before the recordings go to the press. 34 days before everything is made public." The letter, written on FBI stationery and routed through FBI channels, concluded by suggesting that King consider what was described as the only option available to him, a phrase that analysts and historians have spent 60 years debating, but which the Senate committee that later investigated it characterized as an encouragement to suicide. The letter was not sent by a rogue agent. It was the product of an official FBI program called COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, and Martin Luther King was not its only target. COINTELPRO counterintelligence program was authorized by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover in 1956. Its initial stated purpose was to disrupt the Communist Party USA, using covert techniques developed during wartime counterintelligence operations. What distinguished COINTELPRO from ordinary law enforcement was its explicit goal, not to investigate crimes, but to neutralize organizations and individuals the FBI had identified as threats, using methods that included fraud, forgery, psychological manipulation, and coordination with criminal elements to commit violence against targets. The program expanded rapidly. By the early 1960s it had been applied to the Socialist Workers' Party, then to civil rights organizations, then to the entire Black freedom movement, then to anti-Vietnam War groups, then to women's liberation organizations, then to American Indian movement chapters. By the time it was officially terminated in 1971, the FBI had conducted approximately 2,370 documented COINTELPRO operations. Actual numbers are almost certainly higher. Many files were destroyed before investigators arrived. J. Edgar Hoover began surveilling Martin Luther King Jr. in 1958, 5 years before the March on Washington. By 1963, after King's "I Have a Dream" speech brought him international prominence, Hoover sent a memo to his assistant directors describing King as the most dangerous Negro in America. The FBI obtained authorization from Attorney General Robert Kennedy to wiretap King's home and office, using the justification that King's advisor Stanley Levison had Communist Party connections. The wiretaps immediately revealed that the communist concern was peripheral. What they produced instead was evidence of King's extramarital relationships, information Hoover found far more operationally useful. The FBI bugged King's hotel rooms across the country. The recordings were made over years, cataloged, and held. Hoover sent copies to leaders in the civil rights movement, to journalists, to politicians, and eventually to Coretta Scott King directly. The FBI was not investigating Martin Luther King. It was running a systematic campaign to destroy him. The letter mailed to King in November 1964 was drafted in the FBI's Domestic Intelligence Division under Assistant Director William Sullivan. It was sent anonymously, accompanied by a compilation tape of recordings from hotel room surveillance. The letter's text, partially reproduced in the 1976 Senate Church Committee report, told King that he was a colossal fraud and an evil, abnormal beast, and that he had 34 days before the recordings would be sent to newspapers. The phrase the Church Committee identified as a suggestion of suicide was, "There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal fraudulent self is bared to the nation." The tape and letter arrived at King's Atlanta office while he was abroad accepting the Nobel Peace Prize. His wife opened the package first. King convened a meeting of his closest advisors to discuss it. The FBI monitored the meeting through a previously planted microphone. Fred Hampton was 21 years old and the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party when the FBI identified him as a significant threat. He was organizing a coalition between the Black Panthers, the Young Patriots organization, and the Young Lords, a multiracial alliance that FBI analysis suggested could become politically powerful. The FBI's Chicago field office had recruited a Panther named William O'Neill as an informant. O'Neill became Hampton's personal bodyguard and the BPP's chief of security. On December 3, 1969, O'Neill slipped a drug, likely secobarbital, into Hampton's drink at a party. O'Neill also provided the FBI and Chicago police with a detailed floor plan of Hampton's apartment, including the precise location of his bed. At 4:45 a.m. on December 4, a Chicago police tactical unit entered the apartment. They fired between 99 and 200 rounds. Fred Hampton, drugged in his bed, was shot twice in the head at close range. He was 21 years old. A subsequent investigation found that the Panthers had fired one shot. One of COINTELPRO's most documented techniques was the deliberate manufacturing of conflict between target organizations, sending forged letters, fabricated rumors, and falsely attributed insults to organizations the FBI wanted to prevent from building coalitions. In California, the FBI sent fake letters from the Black Panther Party to the United Slaves Organization, a rival group, containing threatening and inflammatory language designed to escalate tension. 3 Black Panthers were subsequently killed in confrontations with United Slaves members that FBI documents later revealed were partly provoked by Bureau-manufactured correspondence. The FBI also targeted the Nation of Islam and other black nationalist organizations with similar operations, sending forged letters between leaders designed to create personal conflicts, alliances with criminal elements, and public embarrassments. The program's explicit goal, stated in internal memos, was to prevent the rise of a black messiah, any figure who might unify black political power in America. COINTELPRO remained entirely classified until March 8, 1971, when a group calling itself the Citizens Commission to Investigate the FBI broke into the FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania, a small office outside Philadelphia, and removed every document in it. The burglary was never solved. Over the following weeks, the group mailed documents to newspapers across the country. Most editors initially declined to publish them, uncertain of their authenticity. The Washington Post published first. The documents revealed, for the first time publicly, that the FBI maintained surveillance programs against political organizations, that it used informants to disrupt lawful activity, and that COINTELPRO existed. J. Edgar Hoover shut down the formal program 3 weeks later on April 28, 1971. The shutdown of the program's official designation did not end the activities it described. Subsequent congressional investigations found that many COINTELPRO techniques continued under different administrative classifications. In 1975, the Senate Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations with Respect to Intelligence Activities, chaired by Senator Frank Church of Idaho, conducted the most comprehensive public investigation of American intelligence abuses ever completed. The Church Committee's final report documented COINTELPRO in detail, including the King suicide letter, the Hampton operation, and hundreds of individual cases of illegal surveillance, harassment, and disruption. The committee found that between 1960 and 1974, the FBI had opened 500,000 intelligence files on domestic organizations and individuals. It had conducted 2,370 documented COINTELPRO operations. The NSA had intercepted the communications of American citizens without warrants. The CIA had conducted domestic operations explicitly prohibited by its founding charter. The committee's conclusion: the government itself had engaged in lawbreaking and intimidation of citizens. Church famously called the NSA a potential monster capable of imposing total tyranny. Congress passed significant intelligence reforms. Most were subsequently weakened or circumvented. Elmer Geronimo Pratt was Deputy Minister of Defense for the Southern California Black Panther Party when he was convicted of murder in 1972 and sentenced to life in prison. He maintained his innocence for 27 years. The FBI's own surveillance records showed that Pratt had been in Oakland, 400 miles away, at a Black Panther meeting at the time of the murder, a fact the FBI knew because their informants had been present at the meeting. The FBI withheld this information from the defense and from the prosecution. They also failed to disclose that the trial's key witness against Pratt was himself an FBI informant.
In 1997, a California judge vacated Pratt's conviction, ruling that the prosecution's withholding of informant status information was prejudicial.
Pratt was released after 27 years in prison. He received $4.5 million in a civil settlement. The FBI agent who supervised the COINTELPRO operation against the Black Panthers during Pratt's trial was never disciplined. One of the most significant unresolved questions from COINTELPRO is the identity of informants who were never publicly named. The FBI's informant network within civil rights organizations was extensive. The Church Committee estimated that roughly 1 in 6 members of some radical organizations was a paid informant. But many files were destroyed before investigators arrived, and those that survived were heavily redacted before release. Some informants have been named through declassified records or legal proceedings. Many have not.
In several cases, people who served as prominent leaders of civil rights organizations, people who marched, who spoke, who were publicly celebrated as heroes of the movement, have files suggesting informant relationships that were never fully resolved. The FBI's policy of protecting informant identities was absolute. It continues to protect those who are still alive. Some of them may have grandchildren who believe their grandparents were heroes. They may be right. The files in the archive contain a different story. COINTELPRO was officially terminated in 1971. The doctrine it represented, using intelligence capabilities to disrupt, discredit, and destroy domestic political organizations rather than to investigate actual crimes, was not. Post-Church Committee reforms created the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, prohibited certain domestic operations, and established oversight mechanisms. In subsequent decades, documented programs have emerged that replicate COINTELPRO methodology under different names. The FBI's investigation of the Committee in solidarity with the people of El Salvador in the 1980s, the monitoring of Muslim communities after 2001 through the NYPD's Demographics Unit and FBI mosque crawlers, the surveillance of Black Lives Matter activists documented in FBI documents released after 2020. Each program, when exposed, produces the same response: it was limited, it was legal, it has since been modified. The historical record suggests that what changes is the framing. The tools, applied against the same categories of political activity, remain available to institutions that have demonstrated they will use them. The FBI sent a sitting American president's most prominent critic a letter telling him to commit suicide or be publicly destroyed. That letter exists. It is in the National Archives. The program that produced it was not a rogue operation, it was policy, approved at the highest levels of the institution, conducted by career professionals, and aimed deliberately at people who had committed no crimes. Subscribe to Operation Redact. The institutions that do these things rely on you not looking.